All right. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Health Detective Podcast by Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. My name is Evan Transu, aka Detective Ev, and I will be your host for today's show, episode number 327 of the Health Detective Podcast. And for the second time this week, we are talking business. And we're not just talking business, we're talking with someone who we've had on the show, I think multiple times now, maybe just once, and we've done an Instagram live. I forget what it was, but I absolutely love talking to this guest. She is someone actually doing it, like understands the real business side to this. And I'm not calling anyone out. I'm just saying there are a lot of people out there nowadays that are talking about business stuff, teaching business stuff, and they've never actually built a business, let alone helped someone else do it. But Hailey is the real deal. So I will read her bio here and then we will waste no time. We're going to jump right into it. So Hailey Rowe is a marketing and sales coach, as well as a LinkedIn lead generation service provider. She helps health coaches and functional medicine practitioners build their business, book clients, develop their no-brainer offers, and grow their income and impact. She shares her FAST, an acronym, framework, marketing, and business tips on her Health Coach Nation podcast and in her free Marketing Hub Facebook group. She's been named as one of the top 25 coaches in Chicago by Chicago Entrepreneur Magazine and one of the top 6 business podcasts for health coaches by Primal Health Coach Institute. Since 2010, Hailey has worked in the coaching industry and in business development/marketing for startups. Hailey's philosophy is this: you can have an amazing service and impact to make, but without a strong mindset and sales and marketing plan, your business will remain a hobby. You have no idea how timely that statement and this topic is. Welcome back to the show, my friend.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. And what a flawless intro that you read. So, I've never heard anybody read my intro so smoothly.
Good. You know what? Thank you, because I've been having a thing lately. Oh man, I probably just re-jinxed myself, but I always mess up one word on the live read. Never two, just one. So this worked out nice today. Just for people that might be listening to you for the first time, because if I'm thinking about it, we do so many releases. Your last episode, it seems like it was recent. It might have been like early 200s or late 100s. So can we just talk really quick about how you got into this? 2010 is obviously a while ago, so it's not
Yeah,
like you're new to it, but I'd love to hear how you got into this to begin with. I think that builds credibility.
definitely. Well, just like all your listeners, I love health and wellness. And actually, fitness was kind of my gateway into personal development and even entrepreneurship because I just started falling in love with the process of growing yourself. And entrepreneurship is a great way to do that. So, I ended up getting a couple certifications pretty young and not it's kind of like, I don't really know what I want to do with all these certifications yet, but I ended up getting my bachelor's in entrepreneurship. And then I worked in the startup world in business development and marketing, and they all happened to be wellness startups. So I was kind of combining my passions for wellness and the whole marketing and sales process. And I loved working at these startups because it taught me a couple things. Number one, how to figure things out. Like I was given responsibilities at that time to, write their website copy or create their employee manual. And I was like, what? I did not feel qualified at the time to be doing that. But at a fast-paced startup, and when you're around a lot of entrepreneurs, that's just what you have to do. And so I loved that job, and I worked at a couple different companies in the wellness space, but I loved that whole phase in my life because it just made me realize that even though you think other entrepreneurs have it all figured out, they really don't. And it gave me the confidence to finally start my own business fully on my own because I kept putting that off because I thought, oh, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. But then when I saw, working at these startups, what I had to figure out in a short period of time, I was like, okay, I think everybody's still figuring it out. And so I might as well just start my own business. So I did in 2017. And I started my Health Coach Nation podcast at that time too. And what I wanted to do was work with wellness professionals because I see so many talented ones who have an amazing craft at helping their clients with their wellness, but they dread sales and marketing or they don't know how to go about it. And it's sad when you get your certification and that's a pivotal moment where you've invested in your education and you're ready to go. And then you're like stuck wondering how to go get clients. So that's my passion, is helping you at that stage, and been doing it ever since.
Nice. I mentioned that already that it was timely. And the reason that I said that, and I laughed at a few things that you said, not at you, but just because of how relevant this is to what's going on right now. We're currently developing something where we might do like a weekly kind of a business mastermind call, you could call it, in our graduates group. So we'll talk about this at some point.
Cool.
But the bottom line is we're seeing this over and over again, especially as FDN continues to grow. I mean, over the last several years, especially, it's really become a massive thing. And we have over 1,000 people in a paid graduate group. So we have thousands of graduates, but these people pay to be there, to be professionals out there and doing it. And it's interesting to me because I really was someone who was more business and entrepreneurially minded first and then got into health. And there's nothing wrong with it being the opposite. But I think an inherent problem that often comes up is it's exactly as you described. These people are super passionate. And now it's like, wait, I got to do this business thing. They never signed up for that. And I don't think people view this necessarily as a skill that can be acquired. And
Yeah.
I like laugh. I'm like, look at what you've done. You had 5 different health conditions, some of which doctors told you were incurable. You overcame that. And you're telling me you can't figure out this side. I think they need to treat it just like they treated their health. They read books, they
Yeah.
studied, they got coaches. So if we look at it as a skill, it's something that can be built. And there's a million skills that we can talk about, but today's topic is time management. And what's cool about this topic is this can be beneficial for someone who's just starting out. You can avoid so many traps if you get proper time management techniques in place from day one. And then if you're someone that maybe you're about to hire your first person and you're actually overloaded with clients, great problem to have. That's a whole different area of time management stuff. So, Hailey, let's break this down. You work with people all the time. Where can we even begin on the topic of time management to help get people started here?
Yeah, well, I think you just pointed out a really good point, which is we have to first start with what's your identity
Mhm.
around time management and how you use your time and who you can be. Because if you just think, oh, I'm just always really scattered, or I just get really overwhelmed easily, or as you were saying with starting a business, some people just don't see themselves as entrepreneurs. They just see themselves as, oh, I love health. I'm good at that, but I'm not an entrepreneur at heart. And when we define ourselves that way, the rest of the actions are going to be a lot harder, right? So I think the first thing is to catch yourself because so much time is wasted mentally just on all your limitations and all the things you think you can't do. So I think the first step is to ask yourself, what are your beliefs and thoughts about time? Do you think it's you always have to rush and that there's no extra room in your calendar and that it's going to be really hard to figure out how to fit certain things in? Or do you believe that you can, make choices every day to level up and it doesn't have to be perfect and you can start to layer in things and all that? So that's the first step. I think the second step is I think a lot of people struggle to know where their focus should be.
Mhm.
And so I think you have to know obviously what your goals are with your business for right now. And then from there, we have to break it down into something very manageable. And I have a whole process I can go into with that, but I'll pause first and just, see if you want to go into that or kind of where you want to go with this.
Sure. I mean, of course, I want to hear about the process too, but I would say to go off your points, one of the things that came to mind immediately is time being spent on the wrong things. So,
Mhm.
especially when people are starting, it's like, oh my God, I got to get the website perfect and I got to do this and my Canva template's got to be awesome and I have to have 90 days of social media content planned out. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I'm not even saying there's not a time and place for that. It's not what I'm arguing. But do you have any plan right now to get yourself in front of people to actually make some sales?
Yes.
I'm more in the boat of like, let's figure out that stuff first. Then we can work on the other problems of the business. Like, sure, get some insurance, get a banking account, fine.
Mhm.
But like, let's work on selling first and then we can get to this stuff. So, time spent in the wrong place. And I think those are actually limiting beliefs and fears, which you alluded to, being projected into how they're acting on a day-to-day basis. It's not that they wanted to do the website and Canvas template so much. They don't love that, but they love that a hell of a lot more than getting on sales calls or whatever it
Yes.
might be.
Oh my gosh, you're so right. I see that so often. It's so much more comfortable to sit in your house and obsess over your Canva graphic than it is to, go live like this in front of an audience and talk
Yes.
about your business. So I have a system called the 4 steps of client attraction. And I use this to tell my clients, like, hey, here's how you know if you're using your time kind of on maybe back end stuff that may need to be done, but maybe it's not stuff you need to obsess over or spend forever on, versus here's what, if we were like, you got to get a client tomorrow, here's what we should be focused on. So the 4 steps of client attraction are connect, engage, pre-offer, and sell. And what I mean by that is we have to first connect with your ideal people. So either you want to take the angle of connecting with potential partners, like referral partners who you could collaborate with and do lives like this, or do a guest training for their students or audience or whatever. You want to engage. So either the angle of partners or the angle of to your potential client. Like if you work with a certain niche that's very findable, for example, they maybe are part of a local group or that you could go speak to, or maybe they hang out on LinkedIn or wherever they hang out. The second thing is we have to engage with them. So engaging, that's asking an intentional question to find out from someone what is useful to them, what do they want, what do they find beneficial from you. I think a lot of people skip this stage or just assume what people want or what people would find useful, and then that's why their sales don't go well, because they skip the step of getting to know the other person and building a relationship and understanding the other person. And when you do understand the person, that leads us to the next step, which is make a good pre-offer, which is giving value upfront, a quick win upfront. And I mean like a tangible win. Like if you had, a lot of people say, oh, I have an email freebie, for example, which is great. But their email freebie is like, a get healthy checklist, which is really broad and it's probably overwhelming because that's a huge topic, versus a micro win freebie could be like, let's say you're hearing from your audience, they really struggle with overeating, but in particular, one little micro win you could give them is how to stop overeating tonight at dinner. Because maybe dinner is the one that, is a 5-minute exercise you can do tonight to prevent overeating at dinner. Maybe it's like a breathing exercise or a mindful eating exercise or something. And then the sales phase is what comes after you give a quick win up front, because when people experience a win from you, it builds that trust. And then you can say, this is just the gateway. There's so much more. And would it make sense to go to the sales phase? And not everybody makes it to the sales phase. So here's the other thing I think people waste time on or get stuck on is they think, oh, well, I'm putting so much into connecting and engaging, and no one, only one person bought out of 10 or something like that. And that's normal. So we have to have normal expectations on what we call a funnel, which means you have a lot of people come in and not everybody makes it till the end. But I think a lot of people don't have a lot of people coming in because they're spending their time on the wrong things, or they don't know how to do lead generation. And so then they get discouraged because they're like, oh, well, I did one talk, or I did one conversation with someone and it didn't turn into a client. Well, okay, of course, one is not enough, right? So those are kind of the steps where I say, if your activities fall within one of these things, it's creating your pre-offer that you're going to make really good to give value up front, or taking discovery calls, that's a great use of your time, or engaging with your people through conversations or LinkedIn or a local networking group or a workshop you're giving or whatever. Like those are the kinds of, or pitching to do those kinds of things. That's good time spent.
Yeah. And so just to be clear, when you were talking about the process for time management, connect, engage, pre-offer, sell, that's not the process for time management, right?
Yeah,
That was
that's
just
just like if we're trying to prioritize what you could be doing to grow your business if your goal is to get clients.
I just wanted to make that clear, especially for those on audio. I feel like it's, they're probably like in the kitchen or they're driving or whatever. So they're like, wait a second, was that the thing? So that's just a bonus.
Yeah, I went off on a tangent. Sorry.
No, because this is why it's so much fun doing these podcasts with you, because you always bring up something that even if I know it, it's not something I say often, like the realistic expectations for sales. People are so used to the 9-to-5 thing where it's like everything's kind of laid out for them. Well, if you work for a decent 9-to-5, everything's laid out for them every day and you kind of know what to do. And the expectations are always clear, and you might not even be involved in the sales process. When you are in that, 1 to 10 guys, you're selling like a $3, $4, $5, $6,000 package. 1 out of 10, that's pretty darn good if you ask me. Mm-hmm. Like you're selling a multi-$1,000 package, and I think people will do 5 calls and it didn't work out. They're like, oh my gosh, I suck. It's like, okay, why don't you actually get the numbers of the best, and it's if you saw the numbers of the best, you would instantly realize that your numbers are not nearly as bad as you think. I mean, we run, I have an in-person business in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and we run ads, right, to get leads in. It's like, guys, sometimes we'll do a video that I know 1,000 people saw. 10 people filled out the form to become a lead, and only 4 people ever answered me to come back in. There was 1,000 people, and
Yeah.
4 came into the actual business. Now, those numbers can scale quite a bit down depending on where you're getting the traffic from, right? I'm running an ad and trying to force myself into their life versus them looking for us. So there's nuance there, but this is a numbers game, and thank God there's 7 billion people in this world, and tens of millions have health issues. Not thank God for that, but for people like us, it's not like there is a shortage of people who need help. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So let's get into that process with the time management side. I'd love to talk about this now.
Absolutely. So I think everybody has a different personality and way that they want to manage their time and plan their day. But I think what really helps first is to do a brain download of everything you think you need to be doing, everything that's on your mind right now, whether it's for this week or this month, and just do a huge brain dump first. And then what we have to do, and if you've never done we have to get really good at a couple things. One is actually understanding how long certain tasks take us. So if you've never done a time audit on yourself, one thing I love to do, I use an app called Toggl, Toggl, and I track how long it takes me to, answer my social media messages on average per week, write a post, my client support, how much time am I spending on that? And at the end of the week, it sends me a report of where my time was, so that now I know like what's realistic as far as what kind of things I need to be setting as my tasks this week and what I'm actually going to accomplish. So that's the first thing, is like, don't be afraid of, I think a lot of times we worry about, well, I don't know how long it's going to take me, but okay, you can start to get an idea, or you can add a little extra buffer room and expect it to take actually longer than you think to become somebody who actually does what you say you're going to do. Because that's the second thing. We tend to, with our time, say we're going to do all these things and then don't do it. And then we lose trust with ourselves. And then that goes back to the identity of like, oh, I can't do this. Oh, I'm so bad with time, etc. So we got to get good at honoring our commitments, knowing how long things take us, and then actually batching it into our calendars. So after you do your brain download, you now want to put it into buckets or categories or prioritize it, right? So one of the things that I do is I have my daily basics, or weekly basics, I call them, which are basically things every week. If I do these things, I know I'm going to be maintaining like certain things, either in my business or even in my health. Like I have my basics for what kind of exercise target I want to hit each week. And for my business, it's things like once a day, I want to do X number of new connections, or with my posts, I give myself direction of, I want to do one testimonial post this week. I want to do one, story-based post this week, and one promoting my freebie this week, or something like that. So you got to first look at, okay, what are the targets of the week that will show you're moving in alignment with your goals, and make them tangible and actual number-based targets, instead of just like, oh, post every day. If you're going from 0 posts to now you're going to post every day, is that really like, could we start with something for sure you're going to do it, and then if you want to layer on, great. So that's the daily basics and weekly basics. Then I would have one that's like top priority this week. So things that there are going to be consequences if you do not get them done this week. Example, we're in April right now. Your taxes are probably top priority right now if you haven't already done them. And so that would be stuff where there's like major consequences, and or your obligations and meetings and stuff that you already have that are filling, that you can't move off of your calendar. And then after that, we have the like kind of would be nice, but don't absolutely need to be done this week. And then we have a later list. And this one's really important for all my people who get shiny object syndrome. If you don't have a place to park all your ideas of like stuff you want to do that sound really cool, that you get really excited about, and you find yourself jumping around, having a later list always puts my mind at ease, because I like to do a lot of things too. But I know if I, don't complete some of the things that I know I need to do first right now that are higher priority or that fall within the 4 steps of client attraction that we talked about, I know I'm just going to be getting off track and derailing myself. So I think categorizing it or having, now you don't have to do it the way I just said. There's other ways you could do it. And you could also visually do this for yourself in a place called like Trello. There's a project management tool that allows you to organize tasks visually. But for me, this is rule number 3 or wherever I am in the process is keep you gotta give yourself something that's practical. Like, so I keep my to-do list for the day in my phone notes so that I can access it. I don't have complex, spreadsheets. I don't have to type out my to-do list on my computer. I can be in the line at the grocery store and jot something down that I want to remember for later in the day. So think about with your time management, how can I make things more easy for me to access and doable for me? And then the last thing is knowing your rhythms and when you do your best work or certain things. So for example, I was just on a vacation and I knew I was going to have like 4 hours on a plane. And I know that for me, that's a good time for me to save stuff that I don't need the internet to do. Like, so I'm upgrading some of my worksheets for clients and things like that. And I know I could do that in like a Word doc on my computer. And so I got that stuff all ready for the plane ride. And even though I really wanted to do it at home at my computer before I left for vacation, I was like, no, this is going to be the best thing you can do on the plane ride because I don't need internet and I can do it on my computer. Or same thing with like, I know for me with calls, I tend to do better when they're during the day in the afternoon instead of like late at night. So not to say sometimes I do that for like my client in Sri Lanka, but I'm going to put my call batching times, like I'm going to take the meetings and batch them as if I can during the day. So you have to ask yourself, like, when am I sharpest for certain things, and start to plan your day around, your natural rhythms and what makes sense at certain. And same thing with like waiting. Like I even have things that I'm like, if I'm waiting in line or I'm waiting at the doctor's office to get called in or something, there's tasks I can do there that are smarter for me to do there than when I'm home and I have my computer in front of me. So hopefully that makes sense a little bit.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, obviously. I like the part about the rhythms, especially. And this is, you got to learn yourself. And this is just entrepreneurship in general, man, because you can't avoid it because you're not going to get farther if you don't start to realize what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? Okay, I'm actually not great at that. And I thought I was, but like this helps in general, but especially with the time thing. One thing that I learned for myself, probably it was like 4 or 5 years ago that I really accepted it. And it was hard for me to accept because I always thought I was a night owl before the health stuff. I realized if I wake up, I know people love their little morning routines and they want to do the coffee and then a massage and then sauna and then cold plunge and 5 hours later they get to work. And there's nothing wrong with that. If that works for you guys, obviously that's fine. For me, for whatever reason, the best, most productive time for me is if I wake up 3 minutes later, just being on the computer, which yes, I know we're in the health space. So it's like, on one end, it's not the smartest. I got like the red lights on, Hailey. It looks
Mhm.
ridiculous. Like it's crazy. But if I start at 6 or 6:30 and just go, I am so productive. I'm so focused. The distractions of the days haven't come in. I feel like I am getting 2 or 3 hours worth of work done in each of those hours in the morning, then as opposed to if I did it in the afternoon. Now that's me.
Mhm.
We have our director of marketing here at FDN, and she's like the opposite. She loves doing her stuff at night. So if you contact her in the morning, she's kind of doing her own thing, and then she'll work all the way until 9 p.m. So there's
Yeah.
no right or wrong. And the reason I mention that is because I think a lot of these people see these Instagram influencers and stuff like that, and they tell them this is how you need to do it. You got to have the morning routine and then this, then that. It's like, no, man, that's actually that's not how it works all the time. You have to be
Yeah.
familiar with Alex Hormozy, right?
Yeah, I love him. Mhm.
Okay. I love what he's been saying. He's like, I made, he's like $100 million plus portfolio. He's like, I've never made my bed in the morning. Like, I don't
Yeah,
do this. I don't do that. And I'm
right.
okay. I'm fine. And so for some people that's important. It's not always. What I want to go back to is let's talk to the starting entrepreneurs right now. So the
Mhm.
people that just graduated FTN, they are excited, but they realize, oh my God, I got to get these clients now. So what would you be focusing, or what would you recommend they focus their time on in that scenario, keeping in mind these people might work full-time jobs, or they might be
Yeah,
moms, they might have both of those things. So they objectively might not have 8 to 10 hours a day to work on their business. What's the most important stuff and how can they figure that out?
definitely. Well, I think the first step I always am a fan of let's start with the lowest hanging fruit. And Alex Hormozy would say the same thing. Like when he talks about lead gen, he's like, don't go do paid ads right this second. Like, I mean, you can, but like start first with who have been your past clients and do you have a referral program? Do you have, a way to leverage that first? So that's my first question is I would ask everyone to reflect here. Like if I had to get a client tomorrow, where would I start or who would I talk to first? And chances are you'll think of, oh, I had my peer coaching clients and I had my practice clients that I did free coaching with, and I had maybe you had a paid client or two. Okay, start there and say, could I have a referral incentive where if, they refer someone for a free consult and then that person signs up, there's some kind of, maybe they get some more free sessions or maybe they get a commission. You have affiliate program, which you don't need fancy tech for yet. I mean, you could just do it the old fashioned way. Like, so that would be the first thing is like, let's start with your lowest hanging fruit, most basic opportunity to connect, engage, pre-offer, and sell as I talked about earlier. The second thing I would ask yourself is what do I feel is blocking me from getting clients? Because that's going to uncover some things that may need improvement. So if I ask you what's blocking you from getting your next sale or client or discovery call, and you're like, well, I don't even know what I'm selling. Oh, okay. Well, we need to decide your offer, the price, what it is, what the benefits are. Or maybe it's like, oh, well, I don't even know where to start. Okay. Well, if you did know where to start, what might that be? Or if you had an idea of your local, like sometimes I like to start too with local. So that's the other thing is like decide, are you in a place where you could do some local marketing or are you only, like I do have some clients who live abroad and in their areas and with healthcare there, it's just like not a thing as much as to have a health coach and whatnot. So those ones I understand and like we start online. But like here, if in the US, some of my clients can start locally with they already go to a chiropractor who they could form a referral partnership with. So that's another low-hanging fruit before going into posting on Instagram 4 times a week and doing reels and all the things. And then the last thing I would say is as an easier, like when it comes to social media, I think a lot of people overcomplicate that. And I would suggest if you had to pick how to prioritize your time on social media, I would prioritize connecting, like, for example, on LinkedIn, which is a networking platform. It's much easier to connect with new people who are either potential partners or potential clients if you work with a certain type of job title. And spend your time, building those connections, saying to someone, would you be open to exploring collaboration together or something like that, than it is obsessing over your posting all the time. Because if you have no traffic yet, and we can talk about how you do that long term, but if you have no traffic yet, your posts are only going to be seen by like 3% of your followers, or like
Your
sometimes
mom, maybe.
6%. Yeah, but like it's not a lot. So I think spending that time like more engaging with the people individually or planning collaborations, partnerships is a better use of time than just like posting and hoping that someone sees it. And then the last thing I'll say is get on Google My Business. If you're local, if you want to be searchable local, that's a thing you can set up once and then people can find you when they're looking for whatever your service is. And also think about things that are more passive, like local directories or health directories that you can list yourself on. Sometimes those kinds of things can be also like a low-hanging fruit that just sits there and you could be found.
One of the themes that you were talking about here, whether it's social media, LinkedIn, local, is I don't know, this shouldn't be funny, and I'm not trying to be condescending or rude, but we'll get people, I won't say an FDN, let's say the health coaching community, that say, okay, I don't want to do social, I don't want to do talks, I don't want to meet people, I don't want to do any of this stuff.
Yeah.
how can I grow my business? And I said, okay, so you tell me, XYZ person, how you would grow a business if no one knows that you exist. I'm not saying that you have to do any one of those things, and I don't think you are either. However, people are going to need to know that you exist to potentially buy your services, especially when you get realistic on the numbers, which we already have today. If 10 discovery calls, one of them leads to a sale, especially when you're first starting, that's probably going to be the ratio. You're going to need to interact with quite a few people to go make this work. And I think local, to a separate point here, I think local gets overlooked a lot.
I
And
agree.
people also forget that business existed. I know this is crazy for people. Business actually existed before the internet was around. Like, people
Mhm.
owned businesses, and there was way to acquire clients and customers for said businesses without social media and the internet. And I know that because they didn't exist. So I still think it's one of the best things because, think about you and I, for example, right? We've built trust over these podcasts. I would certainly recommend people to you. In fact, I have in the past. But the first podcast, you're feeling the person out. Second one, it's like, okay, I like this person a little more. So it takes a few times versus I've had plenty of situations where I go to a Toastmasters group, public speaking stuff, or you can go to a BNI, which is like a business networking group. You go there, you start shaking hands and having real conversations. What takes 4 or 5 interactions on podcasts or calls online sometimes can be done in one simple conversation. And I've had people either sign up for stuff or give me a referral from one single talk or event
Yeah.
in person. So I wouldn't overlook that, right? That seems like a great use of your time.
Definitely. I was in a local women's networking group and I got 2 clients out of it just by
Nice.
sharing what I do, giving value to the group, like, and then I gave a talk once. And here's the cool thing, once you start with one, first of all, it gets easier every other time you do it and you can keep repeating the same topic, or, like, it just, you get in a little swing of things. But I did one talk, I posted a picture on LinkedIn, and then I got another talk just from posting the picture because someone was like, "Oh, you do that? Could you
Yes.
talk to my company and do that too?" Right? So I think it's like it does kind of, it gets, I know that first of everything is the hardest,
Mhm.
getting that first client, that first workshop, that first partner. But once you do, you get a process that you can kind of keep repeating and keep going off of, and it gets smoother. But I think you're right. Like, some people just come up with, well, I don't want to do any of those things. I just want clients to come to me. And it's like, well, unless you're going to hire an entire marketing team and, like, you know, be hands off, like, you gotta be the first marketer
Yeah.
in your company.
And, just to get real with people, if you don't want to manage yourself and your time and you don't want to put yourself out there for any reason, there's nothing wrong with a job. That's kind of why they
No.
created them, is for people that don't want to do those things. And I don't mean this in a funny way. I'm an employee at FTN, right? So I have my own business. I have the in-person stuff. I do speaking and I have this. There's a time and place. So this is not me coming at it saying that there's something wrong with it, but it's like we really got to get real sometimes with the entrepreneurship thing. And I think, again, going back to that point, it's glamorized on Instagram and social media nowadays. So all these people think that they have to do it or they're failures. It's like, no, that's not the case at all. There's times and places for everything. My fiance is like the opposite of me with that stuff. This does not energize her to be going out there and taking these risks and doing that. So she works not only for us, but for some other health coaches, and she's happier than I've ever seen her. So this is someone in my life that I'm saying this about. It's not a good or bad thing. It's just getting honest with ourselves. And some people, they are willing to do these things. They just haven't pushed. So you need to decide what it is for you. Is it that horrifying that you're never going to do it? Or is it just, I've
Mhm.
never really given myself an honest shot? But certainly those first things are always the hardest. Now, I want to move into maybe some ninja secrets here or ninja hacks with time management. We
Mhm.
talked about the person that just might be starting out. They got the full-time job. They got the kids. Okay. Now I want to talk about another subcategory. And I'm sure you see this. There's probably the people that come to you more often than not, I would imagine. These are the individuals that, maybe they do have the charisma. They've been able to attract some clients, and they might even be at a point where they've put away the other jobs. So they are a full-time health coach or FDN, but maybe they're stuck at like the 50 to 60K a year mark. And again, as I say all these things, I'm going to stop disclaiming this. This is not good or bad. I'm not saying there's something wrong with that. That's awesome. You created a real career for yourself that you actually love. That's great. But we all know there are FDNs and health coaches out there that have scaled with like 5 other coaches under them that are doing way more than that and helping way more people as a result. And they are using those same hours in a day. So they must be doing something more effectively. So what are some hacks to help those people that, again, I'm sure you can picture these individuals that are stuck at like, hey, I'm doing all this stuff. I am full-time with this. I'm actually more than full-time, but I don't know how to get any bigger from where I'm at. I'm stuck at like that 60, 70K a year mark.
Yeah. Well, one thing I would start to do to just see what are the things that you want to be doing that you can't get to just because you're only one person and you only have so much time is when you write your list for the day, make a wish list and then a day, like an actual plan list. So I start my day with, I write down everything I would love to do today. And then I actually look at my appointments and bookings and obligations and things I've committed to. And then I actually see what from my wish list can I pick to put into the open space within my day. And if you're an entrepreneur at that 50 to 60K mark and you're noticing that there is no open space because you're on client calls all the time, or you're, things just you're doing a lot of different jobs, it may be time to say, okay, based on my hourly rate for how many hours I work, which is why it's good to have Toggle because it'll show you how many hours you work each week. And you can break down your actual hourly rate. And by that, I mean, like, I actually count like my marketing time, my client time, like those are all the hours I work. So anyways, you calculate your hourly rate and then you say, which thing is a repetitive administrative task first that's kind of easy that I could either film myself doing, or I could document how to do it, or I could transcribe the video about how I do it and teach someone, that I could get off of my plate for less than my hourly rate as an entrepreneur. And that might be your first team member or subcontractor. And for me, I hired a virtual assistant very early in my business to help me with, because if I was going to commit to a weekly podcast, for example, I was not going to want to edit it every single week, upload the show notes, upload it to iTunes and all the other platforms. And so as soon as I got a process down for that, I filmed it, I documented it. It's not perfect, it never will be, but I got it to a point where it's like, okay, we can make this a consistent thing, which was my top priority. And I have a virtual assistant now. And now my podcast, it might take me just the time to record it. And then I review really fast the show notes. And that's about it. So I would say that's a process you can go through and say, like, what is the repeatable thing I'm doing? And a lot of times for wellness professionals, it's some of that like paperwork or like, certain things like that. And so if you don't already have, that's the other thing I'll say is if you're noticing with your clients that you're answering a lot of the same questions, you're recommending the same link to a lot of them for some kind of supplement or something like that, like start to put templates or just like have a way to not have to repeat yourself all the time. So like if maybe you start to have in conjunction with your private coaching sessions, a pre-recorded video that goes through the FAQs of the week that usually come up with that client or something like that. So obviously health coaching is individualized and I understand that, but you're going to start to notice themes. And same thing with your content. You're going to start to notice common things people respond well to. And so you can start to have like pillar content or stuff that you save and repurpose several times, or like with your clients, pre-recorded videos or worksheets or something that you can reuse. So the more you can start to see those, like, where are my opportunities to do this once really well and kind of keep repurposing it is helpful. And then the last thing I'll say is with marketing, eventually there comes a time when you can make something repeatable. Like, so for example, I have a free client attraction class and I've led it several times for different organizations and whatnot. And so what I've done now is made it a pre-recorded freebie that I can keep sending everyone to. And now my marketing strategy is cohesive. Everybody goes through the same video. They get to know me. They go, so it's like, where are those opportunities is a big question you should be asking yourself at that level.
I love that, especially for the health coaches, which makes sense why you help them, because there are so many things that come up regularly, especially like the lifestyle stuff, man. I mean, most of us are really passionate about the lab side. Not that the lifestyle stuff's not important. We know that, but we get excited about that. We want to nerd out on the results, and each result is very unique. But, the idea that any FDN that's good and worth half their stuff is going to recommend going to bed at 9:30 or 10. No, that's pretty generic. All of us are going to do that. Are we going to recommend that you get out for some morning light? Sure. Are we going to recommend that you eat whole foods, right? Like single ingredient foods? Yeah. So I've actually seen some of the top FDNs, go figure, do this, where these things are structured either in like video courses or quick little downloads or reads for people. So it's like, hey, go do this, and then we'll focus on the labs, because that, of course, is actually our highest rate per hour. It's right. When I'm analyzing labs with someone and going over those protocols, that's going to be the best bang for my buck. And I think what happens is sometimes we could run into the type of entrepreneur that wants everything so perfect, which is not a good mix for entrepreneurship. It's never perfect, like you said several times on this show today, that they don't want anyone else to touch their stuff. And I'm not dissing him by any means. My dad is one of the hardest working people I know. And that's not just the son that says that because it's their dad. It's like, no, he's like a monster. It's ridiculous. But he was so afraid in his entrepreneurial journey at one point with his landscaping business. He didn't want anyone else to touch it. He didn't want him to do it wrong. He wanted everything to look perfect. And fair enough. If he stepped away from it, eventually there's going to be some imperfections. But the downside of that is, a man can only work so many 12 or 14-hour days out beating the hell out of their body before there's a cap on that. So you got to find those things, like Hailey said, like what's the low hanging fruit. So for me with speaking, of course, Hailey, the most, you've done gigs. It's like the highest paid time for me is when I'm actually speaking, and you get a lot for that single hour or two that you're speaking. It's a great thing. But there's outreach. There's the lead generation for this. You got to contact these places. So I can hire a VA, hypothetically, for $12 an hour, sometimes even less, depending on the country that they're in. And they're happy to do this. They're really actually grateful for it. You can do this, and they're doing the outreach for you. So they're going to 100 people, 100 places, schools, businesses, whatever. And you've only spent, 24, 36 bucks, but you could charge the gig maybe $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, depending on your level of speaking. So really cool stuff there. Some apps. This is one of the last things I wanted to talk about before we discuss where people can find you, of course. So there's so many time management apps that come up nowadays. You've mentioned Toggle. Seems like you love that one. So that's cool. I didn't know about that. I appreciate it. Motion. Have you gotten advertisements for that yet? That comes up to me all the time.
I have seen that, but I've never used it.
Okay. Yeah, me neither. Yeah. So my point is, it's not really about talking about the apps I get advertised to me all the time. I want to know from you, like, what are you thinking are apps that everyone, or tools even, that everyone should have? We already said Toggle. Is there anything else that like any good entrepreneur needs for time management?
Great question. I will say I've started to really like Trello for organizing projects. And it does work on airplane mode and on airplanes. So y'all, it doesn't require internet to edit it, and it saves still. So I like that kind of for sometimes I use that for managing to-do lists, for helping clients see projects, things like that. And then I also really like the Goal Streaks app to count consistency. So like, it's just a simple app where you check off yes or no. Did I do, like, you could put your weekly basics we talked about earlier in the Goal Streaks app. Like, did I do my 3 posts a week, and which days were they? And you check it off, and you can just over the month start to see, am I meeting these things, or how off am I? And then you can evaluate why, maybe. I will also say I guess on the topic of apps, I use WhatsApp for like client stuff and communication, because you can do everything in there: voice notes, text, attachments, things like that. But I don't really, honestly, Google Drive and Google Docs, like I don't use that many apps. That's my whole thing, is like, keep it simple. Don't make things so complicated that, I got to go to my like special annoying app that I got to pull up and refresh. And like, I try to use less is more.
Okay.
So yeah. And the one thing I wanted to add too, because you mentioned virtual assistants, is I think a really big thing for new entrepreneurs to understand is that there's different types of entrepreneurs. Virtual assistants. There's doers, which are the lower cost ones, where you can give them a task, but you have to break down every step of it. And you have to understand that no one can read your mind as an entrepreneur. So even though you may make assumptions like, well, they obviously should know to insert the person's name, where I say name. No, like, I will tell you, break things down to prevent yourself from some of those, mistakes when you're first outsourcing. So there's doers. There's specialized virtual assistants who are trained in a certain type of thing. Like maybe they're social media type of virtual assistant, so they understand social media, they've made content for clients before, etc. So they're probably a little bit more higher cost, but they don't need as much training. Um, and then the last type is like a super specialized. Like I would say, like they're more like they come up with the strategy and they execute it. So that would be like an online business manager, for example, or somebody like me who, I coach my clients, and then I do also do some of the services with LinkedIn, for example. So I think just side note, if you're going to hire a VA, start with a doer and train them. And that can be a good way to kind of get your feet wet with that whole journey.
Cool. All right. I want to talk about some client testimonials, and normally we do this in the health sense, but I think it's totally appropriate to do it in the business sense. It's cool. Like I would love to know about someone that's stuck at a certain income amount, they work with you, and then bam, they get to this. So we've probably mentioned some of these in the past, and I'm sure there's new ones. So whatever's on your mind, I'd love to talk about a client highlight, even two, if you'd like, that has happened somewhat recently, maybe in the last year, where they started working with you, they were stuck at this place, and then you helped them get to XYZ place in their business.
Yeah, well, I recently interviewed one of my clients, Kasha, who was on my podcast. And what we were working on together is she had experience working with clients, but she wanted to start to have a course and a group program because she was at that point where she was ready for, scaling a little bit. And so she was able in our work together to launch her first beta group and get several people. I believe it was 4 to 6 in her first. She says it on the podcast. I don't know the exact number, but she made more than her investment back with me, and before our time was up together. And she is now getting more opportunities for like partnerships and speaking and things like that to keep expanding her group clientele. So that was kind of cool because she was somebody who was feeling, kind of going back to the time management, she was feeling very scattered and overwhelmed in what were her priorities. And so we were really breaking down. I'm a big fan. I have a thing called like our weekly business protocol. And it's just basically like, what are your basics for the week, and breaking things down, because I think that just trips so many people up. So they have huge, giant, like, edit my website. And it's like, okay, but that's super vague. So like, let's break it down.
Yes.
So that was one of our things that we worked on a lot together. And then I would say another one would probably be, I'm trying to think of the ones I've had on my podcast recently. My other client, he booked his first 3 sales, and he had previously spent a whole year in his business not booking any clients. So he got his first sales. He proved to himself he can do higher ticket. I think that's a big like mindset block. People think it's not even possible. So those are a couple of recent ones, but I have loads of, if you go to my Instagram, I have like almost every day I'll post like a client win screenshot or something like that about what's going on in the inner circle and with private clients.
Awesome, Hailey. So just real quick then, I mean, I think it's obvious what you do, but it's never really obvious, right? So it's always good to say it concisely. Let's talk about who you like to serve, what you do, and then where people can find you.
Yeah. So who I like to serve are wellness professionals. So functional medicine practitioners, nutrition coaches, health coaches, people like that. What I help with is helping you with your marketing and sales system so that you can book clients. And then what was the last thing, where they can find me?
Yeah, that would be helpful. Yes.
Okay. Yes. So I have a free class. It's the 4 steps of client attraction, if you want to go deeper on that. And it's at haileyrowe.com/client-attraction. If you are more interested in the time management topic, I do have a free weekly planning system where I break down every step, and it's at haileyrowe.com/time planning. But I'm at haileyrowe.com in general, Hailey_Rowe on Instagram, Health Coach Nation podcast, and the free Marketing Hub Facebook group.
Sweet. So again, normally I finish off the podcast with what's the one thing that people would do for their health. And maybe I've thrown this to you before, but I can't remember the answer. So I'll throw it again. I would like to know if I could give you a magic wand and you could wave it and force all the entrepreneurs out there to do one thing for their business, whether that's literally start doing one thing, or you can force us all to stop doing one thing. What's the one thing that you get us to do?
Ooh, I think the number one thing would be to give yourself a stronger decision-making criteria and spend less time overthinking non-essentials.
Okay. I'll have to think about that one
So
myself.
what I mean, so
Thank you.
like, I think yeah, sorry. A lot of people spend a lot of their time overthinking. Like, example, let's say post is on your to-do list. That is a neutral task. But what happens is you write the post, you overthink what everyone's going to think about it. You worry that your high school friends are going to comment on it. Then you obsess over the graphic with it. Then you finally get to posting it. No one sees it. You get discouraged. You stop posting for 3 weeks. So notice how this one task got so like extra drama to it compared to doing the thing and seeing your business with data and experimentation and staying in the game. I think a lot of people overthink a lot and it causes them to drain themselves before they even get to the point where they're making progress. And so I think the key is willingness to feel feelings. It's okay to have those feelings. They're going to come up, but a willingness to experiment, do the thing, and not add as much extra drama draining self to the task.
Awesome. Haley, thank you so much for coming back on again. It was very fun.